Wow. Hello, welcome. Welcome to part 4 of DLA Reversul Uf Fortunes. Part 4 of 12. We talked, about our personal versus professional lives last time. And
we did, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And I thought we would start today. Well, the topic today is like cost. The cost in relationships. This is a social economy. It's a social military. And going into a little bit more of like what that means. What the difficulties in discussing cost in a relationship of any type, personal or professional. And starting off before we get really deep into it, yes.
I just wanted
Oh, you put your finger up like you had something to say.
Well, we're going to be talking about costs, but so what exactly do you mean between like you're talking about like relational costs, like emotional and spiritual costs? Like, are you talking about money? What kind of costs are you talking about?
Good question. I'm not talking about money.
Sorry. Just kidding.
But who knows? Finances might factor into part of someone's cost. But by cost, I just mean when you have a relationship, let's talk simple terms of between two people, the two of us, say.
Per example.
What are things you require from the other person?
Which is a price.
And what are the things that you cost? And do those things equal out to a relationship that both parties are satisfied with? Or do there need to be some adjustments in the price and cost? Wouldn't they say like price cost analysis in economic terms or something?
P&L, profit and loss.
Profit and loss. Okay, see, he's got some more straight business experience, whereas I do not. So, whereas
before you do any sort of new deal with a potential client or whatever, you do a P&L, which is basically, okay, this is what we're going to lose on this project, this is what we're going to profit on this project, and if you can get the P's to be bigger than the L's, then, generally it makes sense to do.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to work out, so you enter in, okay, so this is what we have this budgeted, this is what we have in this, this is what these expenditures, this is what it's going to generate, this is how many units, this is like cost per unit,
And as you can imagine, that could be really triggering to people in this day and age and culture to bring that into the realm of personal relationships.
It's pretty triggering for any realm.
Money really gets to the crux of like our feelings.
But it's
fast.
Also probably triggering for any generation, because even though people were more transactional back in the 40s and 50s, when it was like, all right, people in the family had certain jobs that they just did, it was all like, you can't really talk about it very much, it was all very like implied
part structure. Of the culture already embedded in the culture, didn't require
now that everyone's like 7 genders and represents every part of everything, and everyone is like a sub dom sub.
Oof, it's a real topsy-turvy world out there.
Okay.
But before we get really into it, I thought we would take a cue from our generals' Power Grab Lives and do a little fan mail at the beginning of this that's a little related to the topic. We each had an example of orbiters or ops, or some combination of the two, conscious or unconscious ops, who love trying to break bonds. As you know, or maybe you don't, we talk in this army about how the pay matrix is powered off of the breaking of bonds, so the energy that happens when you break apart relationships, and how here we don't operate that way. We build relationships to create energy. Does It's a life cult, not a death cult. So, but we get a lot of examples of people trying to break the bonds here to get, for all kinds of reasons,
And it used to be
tests.
WICO.
Yeah, WICO used to be the big bond that everyone was like, you actually like should leave each other. There's like all kinds of examples.
Well, yeah, it was like first it was people trying to break up WICO's bond with each other. Then it was breaking up the bond between WICO's, people who were cult followers in WICO's cult to them. They succeeded somewhat at doing that. They kind of took out the garbage a little bit. And then it was now... And it's not so much like both of us as a package being like torn out of this together. It's more like break them up.
Yeah, like someone comes to me with an angle that's usually like, I would call it probably more of a feminist angle or like you're so amazing angle. And then they come to you with a like, what would you say?
Most of the things that I'm getting brought to is that like there's an actual better secret society that you should be a part of. You're amazing. You're wasting your talents on this Iceland, whatever Norwegian focused secret society, but really this secret society is where all the power is. So,
and to get more specific with the fan mail, there was one like, I quote, "You guys aren't going to even be together in a few years, or in this cult. You wait." And then your guy, being basically like, "You're so amazing," catering to the narcissism a bit, right? Of like,
you're incredible. You're so incredible. Honest. You really speak from the heart. You're so vulnerable, and like all of these things that if any of those things were even true, if they were true, they're all qualities that I got from being here. But he's like, these are all amazing. And even your cult, like I can tell the cult is, if you're doing it, it must be great too. But it's also toxic and you need to leave. And they're siphoning away your power and you could be so much better without them, That's the typical one. And then I have people saying like, you return to Judah, return to, be an Orthodox Jew because, that's where all the real power is, and you have so much potential.
And I think for me, everything we attract has to do with the things that we haven't figured out, or like our rackets that have still remain unconscious or kind of ruling us rather than the other way around. So on the flip side, my ops or people trying to come around to break our bond or my bond with this army or whatever, my angle is more like because I care so much about appearances still or how others perceive me, that it's like this looks so like messy, or like this is like this looks bad, basically, and boiling it all down, right? And
so what do you say to our fans out there? We gave them their little minutes of airtime. Any thoughts?
I would say thank you.
Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in and turning up and teaching us or showing us where there's stuff to look into in our own stories and like what we're attracting and why, to learn more about ourselves. And I guess have betting pools or whatever about how long we have or what we're going to do, because
I'd encourage you to make public statements and public bets.
Public bets are great. We love the public bets over here. And like
make us some offers too. I like if you put your money where your mouth is.
I would say one thing about the
no one offers
tone of what we get from people is I don't really think they understand how committed we are or much about what reality is like.
I'm just saying, like, give me a fucking deal. Like, show me that you're right. Like, give me to
like live a better life.
Your carrot game is kind of, first of all, live a better life that I can be like, well, if only I could be like this guy who's telling me these things. He's really got it figured out. But also, like, you know, if you think I should join your cult, like, why? And like, what's the benefits package?
What is
like,
your, if you hate this cult and rail against this, what is your cult about?
Is this going to be like a good cult career move for me to jump cults? Are you offering, like, is this what the next 6 years in your cult is going to look like after the 6 years I just put in on this? Is this so I can, you know, position myself better in the cult world? Like, just, let's get down to business. If you're going to make an offer, you know?
But, you know, the pain matrix isn't really about, like, here's a thing we're going to build, or that here's something awesome. It's more like, let me criticize or critique something and try and break apart a bond, not build one. Break apart a bond, not build one.
You can join our masturbation cult. We like to just, you know, hang out in our basement and just waste away our lives.
This is a cult.
That's kind of what it sounds like out there. That's what they all sound like.
Yeah, at one point or other. Well, you know,
at one point you're like trying to take what I'm saying and like pushing it into the, just like, let's get that out of here.
Move the masturbation topics
that's
off
what
the
it
screen.
Is. No, it's not.
I know what you're saying though. I know what you're saying. See, masturbatory in another way that's not literal.
I'm talking about both. I'm talking about just like the people that are trying to get us off the thing. What exactly are they like contributing? No. Anyway, we're easy to divide. See, we get in. We're trying to like shut each other down. You should be able to pull us apart. You know, out there, you should be able to succeed.
Well, part of the last year and a half of our professional and personal relationship on this journey here has been strengthening our bonds in those ways that are really messy. They've been messy. They've been difficult.
Fuck yeah, they've been
difficult. Cult. Did you get that? Difficult.
I never remember that one in like the lists of all of the cult, like the cult.
Yeah, hard to grow. But not really.
It's gonna be my brand when I outfit. It's gonna be called Difficult.
That's a good one.
And it's gonna be how to do this, but the way slower version. And you get to repeat all the mistakes that I made over the last 6 years, and you know. But it's gonna take less time because you know I already went and made those mistakes, so hopefully you can learn from them faster. But let's move on. We wouldn't want this video to be over an hour, would we?
Who knows? The part that so the thing we went over last time, part 3 here, we talked about like the contract renewal when you came back off a suspension. I think I probably glossed over how crazily I delivered that new contract to you through my undercommunication, which we talked a little bit about in terms of our relationshiping with each other. Like, I come from a family of massive undercommunication and aversion to all conflict
and emotion.
Yeah.
Things are not brought. Would you say that your family delivers things with emotion attached to the thing?
Oh, yeah, but not
guilt.
Really emotions that are above board, like you can understand and work with. They're like emotions like guilt, resentment,
all implied and under the surface.
Passive aggressiveness.
Yeah.
And your style.
My upbringing was aggressive.
Yeah, like slapped to the face, screaming matches, like high-key emotional expression, overexpression rather than underexpression on my part, or my family's. So every time there's a conflict in our professional and personal lives here, we both take on each of those roles. So as you can imagine,
it's like the climates that our people are from. If she's up here in Ireland and I'm here in like, you know, the Middle East, you know, it's a lot hotter over here, and it's going to be a little bit more like, it's going to be a little bit more intense, this is not just us. This is also like a cultural thing. New England families, I would say 60 to 80% are probably more like her. And Middle Eastern families are 60 to 80% going to be more like my upbringing. It's scientific, but we also, we decided to make a relationship because we think we can bring those powers together and create something that's going to be better than the sum of its parts. Wait, better than the sum of its parts?
I don't know.
What is it? You know what I'm saying? What's that
do,
impression?
but I don't know.
I hate having a limited vocabulary, but having so much to say. It's like, have you ever read that? Yeah. Flowers from Algernon was a book that really got to me this year. Just throwing in a book review in here. But
yep, we love to read over here. So that's like, what was I even saying that in relation to? Oh, how I undercommunicated in giving you your contract renewal, delivering it without information, and how you reacted, which was over emotional. We actually just repeated, well, I won't get into that because that's part of the next part. Anyways, that happened in the middle of this Reversal of Fortunes timeline. And something that happened that we talked about, or I talked about with the generals, actually, or General Koa more specifically, during that time period, in the middle of,
the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay,
As
thank
Aristotle
you.
said that. So what it means is the whole, you know it.
I got the fly and then I let it go. Oh, so annoying.
We don't have flies.
It's a
here,
fruit
by
fly.
the way.
It's a tiny fruit fly. I'll look better by saying that. Keep up appearances.
We don't have flies over here, by the way.
But yeah, when I delivered his contract renewal from the Day Life military, that was handed over during the very climax of this Reversal of Fortunes, because that was the contract that delivered that he had his rank had gone higher, so it was R lower, and I was to manage him officially now. What was talked about with General Ko was I'm gonna be covering some of Yona's bill, footing some of his bill on my behalf for her to have him off suspension and to be officially in this army again. Now, I don't mean literal bill like we were talking about earlier today. The costs are, and the pricing, it doesn't have to do with a literal bill. It's well, let's get into it. What does it mean? So our generals were not going to let him back in this army if they had to keep paying what they were saying was too high of a cost for what he was bringing to the table. And this is in the professional, in the role of, an army major, which you were at the time, and coming back on as a sergeant, or not a sergeant.
She forgets these things. She is the sergeant major of the army.
Master sergeant. So many words.
So many just slight ways to just doesn't even remember. Doesn't even pay attention.
Excuse me, do you have something to say?
Yes.
Well, I'm sure you'll have some time at the end.
Are we having a Q&A portion for me to ask my question?
Yeah, I'll turn the camera on. So, yeah, what does it mean to cover someone's cost or foot their bill? I would ask you. What do you think?
Well, you're the one who's covering the cost. This wasn't even something that was brought up to me until the last video. No one ever told me that you were covering my cost. So, with 2 years of experience doing it, what would you say that is?
Okay, so what are some of the costs of Master Sergeant? I would say his basically number one cost to me, and I don't know if the generals would agree with this, is your attitude in which you do things and your, not reticence, not aversion, just the way you kind of protest through doing the orders that are given to you. How you react to them, so the attitude you have about them and the protest along the way of doing them, and outright refusal at times to just doing it with such an attitude that it takes longer, it's met with more protest and all that. That's a cost that I think is kind of your largest, perhaps. And, you know, going back to the, you know, Middle Eastern difference between your overexpression and my underexpression, I think that in a lot of ways we have a similar cost to the generals, but mine's a little more hidden and diffuse over a longer period of time because of my background. Whereas it's kind of, it is like almost a little unfair for you, but like, I don't want to tell you that something's unfair for you, but like your price or how you act in the moment can be explosive and over the top,
very
emotional.
Middle Eastern. Imagine buildings crumbling down, Gaza being laid to waste.
And that's something that's just too expensive because it's just like more on display, and you experience it and you're like, this is definitely happening. Like, I can tell. And I think that like me covering your costs with this new contract was a lot of just like placing me in between you and the generals, and like I bared the brunt of those things.
Which actually works out a lot better for me as well.
And you know what?
At first it wasn't
wait.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
I just have to say this because it clicked. It works out for me too. Because No, because I had a life of no conflict and never learning to fight and not learning how to have frame or like battle in many ways. And you, through your craziness and fighting and attitude, I learned some things that I hadn't learned, you know, like ways I needed to grow. That's all. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, and it's better for me because I prefer being, you know, the transition to get here was kind of tough because there was a lot of moments where I had to walk through the fire a little bit in terms of like that transition, resentments about that transition, me adjusting to feelings of being abandoned and being like, I can say now after 2 years or whatever since I stopped being part of like, almost 2.5 years of stopped being part of like the inner circle, that it's better on the outside than it was on the inside for at least where I am right now. I don't know where, you know, what potential future could have happened if I had like, you know, done things in a more graceful way when I had the opportunity to do them. I try not to go too far into like could ifs, would ifs, what ifs, would haves, who's haves. But you know, I am more a perimeter kind of guy. I enjoy the perimeters a little bit more than the center. So dealing with her and not getting daily, if I still got daily feedback from the generals, I would be very upset. I still get upset when any bit of feedback somehow makes it through her to me. I don't like it. Maybe that's just oppositional defiance order in the highest degree because it's like coming down from the king and queen of the kingdom, that I'm like, you know, I would rather deal with this lower or higher royalty, you know, a bureaucrat of sorts, a duchess, perhaps. You know, just, you know, a royal, but not quite like the authority.
It's something that, like, this cult is not, its constant growth is the goal, so we're not going to be, like, somewhere where you should even have constant attention from the people training you, because you're getting to the point where you can train others, and you don't need that much attention. So I don't even get as much attention as I used to get when I needed it more, because I'm, you know, trying to figure shit out.
In some points, I even can have a paranoid attitude about the thing that I graduated past having to have constant attention from the generals.
Mm-hmm. But then that would mean that you were not a victim, or
I know
that, you know, you didn't have anyone to resent.
But also that I am a better person than I actually am. So it's a tough kind of like, it's a...
better person? What does that even mean?
Forget I said anything about that.
I actually can't stop looking from that thing. It's really... Ooh, okay.
This is how we get people to join our cult.
The fidget spinner is actually the one recruitment tool.
You will do the standards.
So, like, do you think that that's accurate in what your costs are that I said? Like, your biggest costs? And
Perhaps.
do you think that
But you're just get back to what you were saying earlier that we glazed over. You're saying you think you cost similar to me, but it's just more prolonged and like, just for the record, she did say that about 5 minutes ago. But we can get back to me, the exciting part, the part that everyone's tuned in for.
I do think that I have a similar cost, but it is one that like doesn't feel as
It's a Cold War.
costly. And so you know what? Life isn't fair. Sometimes the costs that are the same but don't feel as the same because they're like I was describing, like more diffuse or under the radar. I think they are in some ways like
but only time will tell.
But then something like really tiny that's been eroding comes to light and it's like, oh, that was so costing so much, but we didn't even realize it. Perhaps like how I was secretly sneaking sugar for a year.
It took hundreds of years for the Empire of Rome to erode. It did not happen in one moment, you know?
So that's a bit about my costs, I guess, to the generals, but I don't have an intermediary. It's like, this was an example of me agreeing to foot some of your bill.
Right.
So, do you think that I do that? Do I cover your costs? Do you think? And if not, which ways?
Which ways don't you cover my costs?
Yeah.
I think you cover them enough that I have not been kicked out of this army yet. So I guess you're doing a good job. Good job. You did it. You covered them. But yeah.
I've learned. Well, you don't. You know. There's certainly times where it's been revealed that there were things lacking, and I, you know,
in my
covering of your costs.
But I don't have that knowledge.
Yeah, but for me and me saying those things, like I won't get into the specifics, but there are definitely times where the generals had to point out, what would you call that in economic terms? There was like a little bit of like an open, what do you call it? Like steam was getting let out. Like something was wasting money. Is there a term for that? Like drift.
Like a hole in the bucket.
A hole in the bucket? Yeah. That's way easier
to. Business term.
It's more a life term too. I can understand that one. There was a hole in the bucket and the generals had me patch the holes, and there's still holes getting patched, but they're tinier holes. You know? The holes aren't enough to let the ship even start to sink. It's just like, whoa, what's going on over here? So
it's a curious hole. Huh.
Curious, that one's a new little hole that we never thought would have to be filled. Interesting. So I would say like literal things that happen that show me that there's a cost I'm not covering, or like footing a bill that I'm not footing of his, is when or even a cost of, let's talk about my own price versus cost, like what I'm doing for this army versus what I'm costing this army. I even get signs that those things are equalized or not working when Wiz and Koa, like, their lives are getting affected by some kind of actions either I'm doing over here or that he's doing that I'm not like buffering and letting it get to them. Like any army, right? You don't want the general to have to like hear some bullshit from the soldiers in the barracks, right? Like they deal with bigger shit. So when I let smaller shit affect them, through my side of things is usually through under communicating or letting the spirit of a communication not travel and only like passing it along really literally. That's something that I think has caused problems. Even like way back when there were other people I managed.
Bird metaphor, like a carrier pigeon getting lost and
yeah.
Accidentally like getting fucking. I had a couple things to say. We'll move on though. So what's up? Where are we in our plan for this live?
Well, we're just kind of covering what it meant when you came back on to cover your cost and what it means a little bit more about like price and cost in this social army, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I kind of I'm like repeating myself here, but the only other place in popular culture that I really see people talking about like in personal relationships, like cost, price, economies, would be like manosphere, red pill type of people. And
well, even just more clarified, it's like the two are pickup artists and social justice warriors who hate each other.
yeah, both sides that are really against each other. In the pain matrix, they get to be the right and left that battle, and it almost creates like a red herring or a distraction from actually getting to like sober conversations about price and cost and relational dynamics, social economies, because you just have these two caricatures on both sides.
It's either pay me for my emotional labor, which is the social justice warrior, and what's the pickup artist one?
The pickup artist one is like, tell me how much my I don't know a lot about this side because I come more from the other side in my past, but from what I understand, from what I've been taught here, the more right side is like not right isn't correct, but the like manosphere side is more like, this woman better make my food, or like, this is like the caricature version, like, what is she bringing to the table for me to want to marry her, and like, is she all over the wall, and like what the cost in like terms of like looks and like.
But that's similar to also like the women who are like, I won't date anyone who's not 6'2", who doesn't like have $500,000 a year. You know, women do the same thing.
Oh,
or
yeah.
It's like the caricature because the women do it like over expectations, and then men's kind of thing is almost like a reaction to that now.
Yeah, and I would say that like the nuanced, like more, what do you call it? Like the sincere men talking about this, it's because men are like bearing the brunt of like crazy social dynamics.
And it's creating also that men, the whole MGTOW thing, or like men going to pickup artists is like the whole now, you know, if you watch any pickup video, they're not telling you how to like, if y'all are familiar with what a pickup artist is, it's like a guy who teaches you how to go and pick up girls. And it's a big movement on social media and videos and whatnot. And basically, it is a reaction to the artificial I'm not even going to say high standards, just the artificial standards, would you say, that women have placed on men, basically, in order to be the things that, you know, the men that they want.
Oh, yeah, basically, like, women are going crazy, like, beating men down with really high standards while refusing themselves to be allowed to any critique or conversation about anything we would have to pay. Right. Like, it's no payment for women because we're just women, and how much more can we ask of the men to pay, right, who are already, like, the most victimized from pain matrix culture, the most beaten down, like, taken from. And yeah, some react in ways that can be like just creating more of this divide and gender war and, you know, things that are happening right now.
So then that results in the pickup artist giving you a bunch of tools on how to pick up girls just basically for one night stands, which, like, no, you know, RSD Tyler or whatever, is he still going by RSD Tyler? I don't even know. He's like married. Like, most of these guys at this point are like married, but they're not telling people how to have like happy marriages. They're still like, their whole brands are about guys going out and getting as many dates as possible, which is like, okay, sure, that's a beginning of something. Just like pay me for my emotional capital is the beginning of something.
Yeah, and
but it's just they're both stopped there.
And they're both, what they both reveal is that everyone's super triggered and kind of like unable to, or very reticent to talk about cost on both sides. Women more, I would say, but like both sides are just ramping up.
Cost and price.
Cost and price, yeah. Ramping up and creating like, you know, the pay matrix is fomenting this war, but you know, people are experiencing it naturally as well.
Did you say fomenting?
Yeah.
What's fomenting?
Like
Making
creating it
moment?
happen. Yeah, kind of like fomenting, like feeding the flames to something.
Is that like a real word, or is it like
it's
a new word?
It's a real word from the
I
dictionary.
thought it was like a fake moment. I thought it was like a word.
Oh no, like
Webster's
fomenting.
Dictionary 2024 is
No,
like, this
is
a foment.
It's an oldie one.
We're bringing foments into the thing. It's like fopocalypse.
So
it's
like
a foment, you know?
Yeah, you could make it. You could make that word.
I don't have the time.
So much to do these days. So busy. This army's just work. No fun.
No time to create, you know, vocabulary movements. Vocabulary?
No.
Yes, you can say vocabulary as an adjective.
Maybe.
I don't see
so
why not.
yeah, like okay. So we're getting back on track here.
To my chagrin.
We in this army have very difficult conversations about cost and price and making sure or checking in on if relationships, I mean, we're trying to get them to be relation houses in the end, but where they are at now, they're ships, they're not on stable land quite yet. But like getting them so that both sides are in some way happy, like they're getting enough for what they're giving. And we talked a little bit about that with the generals and us in this professional context. But, you know, let's get personal.
Personal, we bring it into the personal.
Can we handle doing a live, or it's not a live. Can we handle doing this one take unedited video talking about our costs with each other?
Oh my god, so this 40 minutes, this first 40 minutes wasn't even getting to the triggering part?
Maybe not.
God.
It's triggering because, like, you know, it's getting into like who you really are and what you give to other people, how much you take. But the thing about it is, like, as triggering as it may be, you were talking about the 50s and just times of the past when all this stuff was unexplained or talked about and just under the rug. When you don't talk about it and you're always going to have a marketplace. You're always going to have prices and costs. It's not like they don't exist, but when you pretend that they don't, that's when your relationships can have an exploitative nature to them. One person exploiting the other. Power differentials, resentments build because you feel that you're giving too much and not getting enough, but you're never moving your mouth about it. It's just, while it's a difficult thing to start out, making it conscious, we have figured out through our training here, makes for a better experience in the end. And you can get even into it at times.
Even into it?
You can be like, let's see what's up here. What's our give and take? Do we have to adjust anything here? And we get real angry with the generals when they adjust things, but then you know what? It always works out for the better because no one likes to be the exploiter or the exploited. No one likes to be taken advantage or taken advantage of.
Well, some people like it.
Yeah, I guess like deep down though, it doesn't feel good in your heart. At the end of the day, you know when you're doing something that might feel good, but over time it takes its toll.
A hypnotic desire.
It takes its toll.
Hypnotic desire.
Oh my god, you with the on-cam fidget spinner lighting up. It's a new dynamic to these videos.
It's my peacock. It's like my
pickup terms here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can rip someone off when you do things silently. Take advantage. Pretend everything's free love, everything's good, it's all great. Yeah. And then you're just committing like emotional and spiritual violence on the low or something. And you can even bring that out into physical violence once, you know, if you have a real like messed up, untalked about, unexplained or made conscious relationship. So yeah, like we talked about professional costs a little bit between us. So let's get into it. What do you think are some prices in our personal relationship.
You just said professional?
I said we already did professional.
I don't know. I don't really want to get into our personal business too much.
You don't have to get into it too much, but just like in a way that's really a little more vague. Like,
why don't you give an example so I'm clear on what you're comfortable talking about? I don't know. You're the woman.
Okay.
Then I'll be able to say what I think without feeling like I.
It's not that deep. Like literally, here's an example. Here's an example.
Okay.
My something that I do that is of value. Let me start from there. Something that I do in our relationship that's of value is I make us meals every day.
That's true.
I cook the breakfast. You usually will handle a pretty basic lunch. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll make it though, and I make our dinner. And I do the bulk of the dishes, and I just make sure you symbolically do at least one batch a day, probably. Because we do a lot of dishes here because we cook all 3 meals from scratch every day.
Oh, we do.
So that's something that I cover the brunt of, and that's a value I bring. Now, my price, I think, for part of that, I mean, just having to do with that, maybe. And this gets difficult because, like, does the price have to be related to the thing of value you're bringing? Or can it just be another price you have? Whatever. I'll keep it...
Do you have a specific price for that? That's a good question.
I'll keep it more specific. For that, I would say my price for that is that you... well, more specific, probably that you, like, don't complain about food or talk about what you like or don't like about it, or
my favorite thing to do.
What you like to do. But like,
it's like that meme of that kid who comes home and like gets off the bus and then it goes to his mom and is like, that sandwich was terrible.
Yeah.
I hated it. It's like we've been waiting all day at school
thinking
to come
about,
home and tell his mom.
I know what that little kid thing is, because I would have that thing happen where I'd be like, I have a line I'm gonna say. It's like a little weird like demon whisper. It comes in your ear that's like, say this, and then you're just like saying it over and over and so excited to say it.
Mm-hmm. And for him, it was just telling his mom that the sandwich was bad.
But I think to be more accurate in what my price is for that is that I would say there are like a few things that I do that I would say my price for you is that you handle like a lot of the public and you work in public, whether that be via the phone or in literal public, but like you interface with the public in business every day.
Yeah.
And that...
So you have space to do Yao thing.
That is a price that a lot of different things combine, and I'm like, those two are like the exchange. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to have problems in your business life, or you're not keeping things stable in the way that is a part of that price, the things on my end I can easily let them build as resentments when the price is not.
It's kind of a classic one, you know. The
out.
Man goes to work, he brings home the bacon, she cooks the bacon. You know.
But it's
and when
more
it starts
than that
to, but when it starts to devolve, or you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm interpreting this wrong.
Well, you're not like, I wouldn't say that this is wrong, but I want to add a layer to it that I would say, yes, that's like a classic thing, but there's so much more going on in this army, and this army recognizes so many other things of value and has a different hierarchy or a lowerarchy, I guess, on which things are cost more versus less. It comes into a lot of points of contention, actually, around our pain matrix brainwashing, which the pain matrix brainwashing is like the tangible, the like physical reality is the most important, and the people who do that work offer the most value. And then like untangible work, which is often the emotional, the spiritual, what kind of spirit is brought to the table each day.
Yeah.
What kind of like conversations.
It's the how it's getting done.
How is it getting done?
That's the result of the thing as much, but results do actually play a large role in it. Let's not.
So we clearly have our own feelings about this, and
her feelings are also that results play a large part in it, but she just won't say.
Okay. I would say that the results play a large part and are mostly impacted by the untangible reality, the spiritual reality, the emotional reality.
Fair enough.
Wow, look at that. So those places are where a lot of value is placed if those are where the physical results stem from, right? You want to have things sorted in the emotional and the spiritual realm. You want to have persons doing and now I get to the left's like tainting of these words, the labor in those realms, social and emotional labor, which is part of why they made those terms and made them mean the stupid things they mean on the left, because then you can like shut off your brain when you hear it and be like, this doesn't matter and it's stupid. But we're talking about it in a little different way here. Like it's difficult to talk about a marketplace when you're acknowledging those things that most people don't really acknowledge as like having a price, right? You don't talk about the person, this is professional, but the person in the office who just brings the good vibes every day, but maybe doesn't get in all the results money-wise.
Just kidding. I bring the good and the bad vibes. I bring all the vibes.
The pay matrix isn't really set up to compensate or say that person is bringing a lot of values.
Like the Pam in the office, you know, is she the best receptionist? Who knows?
Maybe
but
not.
She definitely brings multiple love triangles. She brings like intrigue. You know, everyone just likes having Pam around, you know? Pam.
So we try to do a holistic, that's the wrong word. We're just trying to talk about a lot of layers here when we talk about cost, price, values, and what's equaling out.
You're talking about all this like new terminology, and I'm just like Pam from The Office.
You know?
Let's just make it retarded for our viewers.
Let's just get retarded in here.
Wasn't the Black Eyed Peas like your first concert?
No, that was my sister's first concert, and I was not able to go because it was her friends that were going.
Well, I didn't get to see Shrek in theaters because I had a tantrum at dinner before we were supposed to see Shrek. So my dad and me didn't go. My dad had to bite the bullet and not see Shrek with me.
So and relevant to our current life.
My mom and my brother saw Shrek and knew all the Shrek jokes and all the Shrek terminology, and I didn't see it for another like many months.
This is the time when you couldn't.
And my brother came home and was literally like, "Shrek is the best movie that I've ever seen," and I was like, it wasn't worth it. So
was your tantrum worth it?
Was not
Never
worth it. Not to be early to Shrek.
So,
I got to see Monsters Inc. But like, did Monsters Inc. have the same cultural impact as Shrek? Quick answer: no, not even a little bit. Even though Monsters Inc.
Movies. No.
Can we just talk about Monsters Inc. for a second?
One sentence.
Adrenochrome.
Okay, great.
That's enough to get our video banned.
Thank you for that. All that work out the window.
You should have kept, you shouldn't have let me say it.
Okay, now I gave an example. Please go, take the floor, sir. On a personal value versus what your price is for that. You have to do a different one. I know I started you off.
I don't want to talk about my things. I feel like they're personal.
Yeah, that's because you don't want to lose face because you have problems.
That's actually not what I'm saying. I'm actually trying to protect our relationship.
Alright.
So let me think of an example that is appropriate.
Great.
So I'm talking about a cost that I have, or a price that I have, and a cost that needs to be filled. Let me give you another option.
You can also talk about a conflict that we've had and what was the discrepancy in price and what one was paying and getting, like what was the issue broken down in that kind of terminology. How is this an issue of price versus cost?
I don't know. I think we have communication price and costs. I think we both have kind of pricing costs in how we want information to be presented.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we each have our like way of doing that. Like, I don't even know how to really go into specifics here, but yeah, like, you know, I don't really like to, like, one of my costs is that, I don't know, price is that information isn't just kind of like dropped on my lap contextless and like thrown like as if it's not a big deal and just like I'm crazy for even thinking blah blah blah. I don't like information to be delivered like that. She doesn't like information to be delivered with a whole lot of emotion and
in sobriety.
Yeah, in sobriety, but also just like when things, I have a tendency to emote more and she has a tendency to emote less, and I get bugged by a lack of emoting while she gets bugged by too much emoting.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both in-sober in their own ways.
Yeah.
You can be emotionally in-sober by like shutting down and dissociating around emotions.
Totally.
That's less my thing, and I'm more like,
my thing.
Volcano, let's go. So we've had to work out our own, I don't know, we're still in process of working out our own communicational difficulties, but it's getting a lot better. I can say 6 months ago we were in a lot worse place. 12 months ago we were in a fucking insane.
I would say that like the place we went was like before you open up any of the can of worms, like we were in a kind of a more totally dissociative place at the beginning of our relationship, professionally and personally here. So like part one of Reversal Uf Fortunes. No one talked about anything. Everything was kept under and unexpressed. And then the can of worms kind of got open.
And then there was also the consequences of that dissociation.
Yes.
Which were like in my opinion, there was a little bit of overcompensation over things that were not addressed in the moment being handled, addressed later. Maybe appropriate conversation. Whatever.
I don't even know what you're talking about right now, but I can probably figure it out.
Right.
But I'm on a roll with my timeline.
Hold
so
on.
then the can of worms gets opened and explodes, worms everywhere, guts, major fights, major emotions running high, in sobriety out the wazoo, like just all over the place.
Toxic.
And then the moment of all the worms getting sorted, maybe, and
sorted.
You're like looking through the worms after they've exploded, and you're like, ooh, that's a nasty worm
Still
today.
Gross.
But then it's like, okay, they're all getting maybe buried or put on lines and to catch fish. I don't know where this metaphor is going, but like it's not as bad. It's the crescendo has happened already, and we're like going in waves. But that's like, I guess maybe kind of getting a little off topic. I'm trying to bring this back and end this on like how we negotiate pricing with each other. Which I think we have this army doing in a lot of ways for us. There's a lot of structures that are in place by nature of being here and doing this that like give us all those structures and boundaries that help us. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Like we have these things that we do, and when we follow those orders and do those things, it's easy to, or at least it works, and we can get through talking about price and cost. And
one of my things is I need to be allowed to be a little bit of a bitch about something. So that's my
totally
cost.
Like one of his costs is
I'm gonna do the work. I've got to be allowed to complain a little bit about
That's the thing. When you do the work, I would say that there, in some ways, we have built in a pricing system where like you can just be a bitch about it to a certain extent. Like I don't think I give you active grief in some ways when you're just like doing your job but like having a bit of a shitty attitude about it. I think that like I don't want you to stay there. I don't think it's gonna work because things are needing to always grow and accelerate here. I don't think it's going to work forever, but it's not like sometimes that is your price. And I know with your patterns, this is probably why it works eventually. I know with your patterns, like you'll bitch about the thing when it comes to your door in the beginning, but you always get the bitching out of the way and then it just works out. Mm-hmm. If it like never worked out, I don't think that would be a fair price. Like, you know what I'm saying?
And I'm sure she extracts some price from me having that price. There's a lot of micro prices in there, bro. It's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't talk about it enough now that I'm seeing us talk about it here.
Which is the theme of these videos. These videos are just like, alright, say it to an audience. And then
you're like, well, we never said it before, actually.
We never actually talked about this. Oh.
We probably
The generals are trying to destroy us by making us talk about things in our lives.
I think it's a generational thing because you are more communicative than me in some ways, but I think that both of us are massively under-communicative by nature, being like millennials. Every generation communicates less and in more haphazard and horrible ways.
We're the worst generation.
But like, we're not. It's just, we can communicate better than Gen Alpha, the iPad generation. But I think that
they have so much. They have like weirdly built-in confidence.
Like telekinesis.
Millennials have the lowest self-esteem of any generation because we're children during 9/11 and like things just kept on going bad all around us, and it just made us really beta. While like Gen Zers and Gen Alphas don't give a fuck about anything. And that's a problem in a different way.
But I guess in the context of this army, our generals are older.
Yeah.
And so
we touched grass, which is a huge thing
good for us. Yeah. But I think that they get probably frustrated by things that they would and their generation would take for granted as like basic levels of communication that I think our generation just doesn't. So when they're really taken aback that we haven't discussed something, we're just like, whoa, what? Like, we didn't even talk about that? How did that happen? It's kind of the vibe. Which I would imagine it would be way worse if you're not in the army that is like
Gen X is like the least talked about. People skip from boomers to millennials. They don't want to talk about Gen X maybe because Gen X has something.
What is that movie that's like so quintessentially Gen X? It's like Reality Bites. I always think about that movie when I think of Gen Xers. It's got Winona Ryder and Ben Stiller in it.
Well, our parents are Gen Xers and
No, my parents are boomers. My dad was more on the cusp. My mom's a boomer.
Well, you're born in the 50s, I guess, as a boomer?
Yeah.
At like 59?
Yeah,
so my parents are cusp boom. Like they're like the oldest Gen X, and our cult leaders are like mid-tier Gen X, and like General Ko is like cusp millennial.
Cusp millennial Gen X. All right, you know what? I think that's a wrap.
Oh, we're not going to get to a full hour. Let's go. Under an hour. We're keeping it right and tight.
Wow.
What?
So the reversal
What does that mean?
Fortunes.
I'm going to work that reaction into my price later.
The reversal of fortunes really brought price to the forefront probably around part 2 and... three and four. Part 3 and 4 of the 4-parters of the reversal. The last.
What are we going to talk about in part 5? You'll see.
Of this series. Part 5 of this series. Because there's 12 parts in this series.
And it's going really well so far, so excited for you guys
excited for what's to come.
Yeah. Hold on.
Make a wash of belief if you're watching. Cash.me/$washitall, paypal.me/washitall, and
love every second of it all the times and live it up.
You're not gonna like washing sometimes. You're not gonna love it.
It's gonna be difficult.
Sometimes it'll be real hard, but I can guarantee you're gonna get something from it every time, no matter if you like the delivery or not. It's gonna be a delivery of growth in one way or another. That's everything.
I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. It's not gonna be fun all the time.